What I'd like you to do is read section 33 of the Constitution. So I'm just going to give you like a minute. Read section 33 of the Constitution. It has 3 subsections. Subsection 1 and subsection 2 is important for you in this subject matter. Subsection 3, 33.3, you should just take note of. You've noted that section 33.1 says that everybody has the right to administrative action that is lawful, reasonable, and procedurally fair. You should understand that in terms of administrative law, everything starts here. This is the constitutional imperative in which the right to administrative action, which is fair or just, is constituted. And at the same time, the lawmaker gives us the 3 qualifications that must be present before an administrative action can also be described as just or fair. And those 3 qualifications are lawfulness, reasonableness, and procedural fairness, or procedurally fair. Everyone has the right to administrative action that is lawful, reasonable, and procedurally fair. But you can also put it differently. You can say that for administrative action to be fair or just or acceptable, it must be lawful, reasonable, and procedurally fair. So now another important aspect, and I'm going to write a little bit here for you to understand. First of all, you can see that subsection 1 makes these 3 qualifications. But subsection 2 talks about a right to written reasons. And you should understand this aspect of the constitutional imperative correctly. It does not mean that if there was no written reasons given, that the administrative action is not just. These 2 things are not linked. If administrative action fulfill the qualities of lawfulness, reasonableness, and procedural fairness, but still the administrator failed to give written reasons to the subject or to the applicant, it does not make the administrative action unjust. This is just a practical measure that has been placed here for the sake of people with low literacy and for the sake of certainty. Because you'll all understand that even literate and educated people have difficulty remembering what they were told. They would turn up at an administrative office, find that their application had been rejected. The administrator might even tell them why it was rejected. And then later on, when they have to approach a legal advisor for assistance, they can't remember what the reasons were. Or they relate those reasons to the lawyer, but they get it wrong. So it's a measure that has been placed here for practical reasons. And if it is failed, it does not make the administrative action unjust or unfair. These 2 things are not linked. It is not a 4th quality element for fair administrative action. It's just a practical measure. And you'll find that subsection 2 links to section 5 of the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act. The entire section 5 of the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act, which you will find on page 192 of your study guide, the entire section 5 discuss the statutory requirements for administrative action. And you should know Section 5. Learn Section 5. We are going to discuss it in a later tutorial session to get more detail. But Section 5 is not unimportant. I've seen numerous exam questions that cover either subsection 1 or subsection 2 or even subsection 4 of Section 5 of the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act. Then, just as a last remark, if you look at this part here, legislation must be enacted. This is just subsection 3 said in far easier terms, and this was the result. The Promotion of Administrative Justice Act 3 of 2000, shortly called the PAJA, was implemented after the instruction was given in Section 33.3. And this is now the legislative or the statutory guideline for administrative action in our country. Now, the important reason why we discuss Section 33 on its own is because these three elements, each individually, have posed challenges in courts. In court cases, different court cases about administrative action have been decided on these three elements, and almost never about all three of them at the same time. You'll find that the challenges to administrative action in our courts, mostly the High Court, happens because an action that was lawful and reasonable was still not done procedurally fair. Or you might find that the action is procedurally fair, but it's not reasonable. It might even be lawful, but it's not reasonable. So you'll find that these challenges are often about one or, well, not more than one, but mostly one of these three characteristics that must be present for administrative action to be fair. Each of these form a chapter in your study guide. There's a chapter on lawfulness. Lawfulness has got a lot to do with the requirements for legality and common law. Reasonableness is often judged subjectively using foreign law. The very first cases judged in South Africa about the reasonableness of administrative action was judged or was decided by using foreign law, foreign court cases. There was a Canadian case, there was 2 Australian cases, there was a British case, where the South African judge merely relied on the standards set in those court cases overseas, because it was done in such an excellent way that the wording and the formula could be very easily implemented in South Africa. So when it comes to reasonableness, you have to do case law. You'll find that reasonableness, you can only explain it in an exam paper by doing that relevant case law of those three cases. Then procedural fairness is mostly described in one of the sections of the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act. And you'll find that in Section 3 and Section 4 of the PAJA. By now, we've covered the requirements for or the definition of an administrative law relationship. We've covered how to identify an organ of state. We've covered the definition of administrative action. We've talked about the sources of administrative law. And for today, we discuss the origin of the right to administrative action, which is in Section 33 of the Constitution. I prefer not to start off with Section 33 it makes it easier to discuss it later, because it steps right into those three qualities that are required for just administrative action. So please, let's proceed. You can raise your hand. In short, in exam papers, I haven't seen a paragraph type question or a long question about Section 33 of the Constitution. I've never seen that in an exam paper. I've seen it as a short question, one of the multiple choice questions. Of course, it structures your work very well in your answer if you refer to Section 33 in passing. It also helps you to structure your thinking when it comes to answering your questions.
Can I just please confirm something, sir? Under Section 33 of the Constitution, under just administrative action, the three characteristics or qualities, it's lawfulness, reasonableness, and judicial fairness.
Yes, you are on the money here. You are spot on.
And under lawfulness, you said legality. I don't know what you are referring to. You said it was stated on legality.
It's that beautiful thing that our politicians do not understand so well. Legality or lawfulness is a broad term. When lawfulness, generally speaking, is a requirement for all types of action, not only administrative action, but any action that we fulfill as citizens of this country must be lawful. And lawfulness have a number of, or legality can be constituted in a number of ways. You have to comply with the common law in your actions. You also have to comply with the statutory law. So if the common law, sometimes you do understand the difference between statutory law and common law. Common law being the unwritten rules that we have been following since ages, and statutory law, which is the written format. Do you understand that difference?
Yes, I do, sir.
Okay. And then, so your actions must comply with either the statutory law or the common law, and in actual fact, both. But in South Africa, we have an extra requirement, and that you must also comply with the spirit of the law.
Okay.
It's an umbrella element. You can be statutory correct. You can comply with the statutory requirements of law in South Africa, but if your spirit is not in line with the spirit of the law, you are doing it to achieve a evil objective, or a biased objective, then you cannot be lawful, or you are not complying with legality. So it is to understand that it's just a broad term to describe that you are complying with all the aspects and requirements of law that has been placed on you.
Both common and statutory law.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And as a side remark, don't forget the spirit of the law. You are going to find one day in legal practice that you have that your client has a case where the official complied with the law in a statutory manner, but the official is technically correct, but the aim of the decision taken by the official is to do your client harm, or to achieve another objective. A very simple explanation is where a police officer, or let us say an official, refuses your client an application for an ID document. The official finds a reason in the act for ID documents, which disqualifies your client. But the reason the administrator or the official wants to do that is he wants to pressurize your client to make a corrupt payment in order to obtain the ID book. So the spirit of the decision is not correct, and therefore, it is. You keep that in mind. You'll find it very useful in legal practice one day. It's called ulterior motives. An official that takes a decision which is apparently correct, but he has ulterior motives, that's also not lawful or legal. But I think you get the idea. Thanks for the question. More questions? What we are going to do in the next 3 sessions is we are going to discuss each of these 3 individually. We're going to attribute a session to each of them, because you can get a 10 to 15 points question in the exam on each of this. And what the lecturer likes to do is the lecturer will ask you a question about one of the 3 in the exam. So you have to learn how to explain lawfulness, you have to learn how to explain reasonableness, you have to learn how to explain procedural fairness, because you are going to get a question about one of the 3 in your exam paper. I haven't seen many exam papers where students were challenged to answer a question on more than one of the 3. It's probably the aspect of the work you are going to use in practice one day the most, is to understand these 3, lawfulness, reasonableness, and procedural fairness, because it's on one of those 3 that the administrator is going to fail and therefore harm your client, and that's why your client's going to be in your office to come and ask for help. Any other questions from anybody? You've got me to your disposal. I've passed this exam many times, so you must ask your questions. Takalani, I think that seems to be all for the day. We seems to be done for the day. Thank you very much.